All right. Well, it looks like some additional folks will be joining us as well, but let's go ahead and get started since it's 3:30. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Reddish, Executive Vice President here at the Little Rock Regional Chamber, and we are very happy to be joining you all today on Friday afternoon to hopefully share some information which we think will help your business. We're very pleased to be joined by our Congressman French Hill from the 2nd District of Arkansas, as well as Edward Haddock, who is the District Director here in Arkansas for the Small Business Administration. For those who have been tracking along with us through this pandemic, you've heard from these two gentlemen before. I continue to say we've got the best District Director in SBA here in Arkansas with us in Edward, and we've been very well served by Congressman Hill, who not only has been representing us, our district, but has been leading our country on the Oversight Committee for the coronavirus, as well as helping to craft a lot of this legislation. So without further ado, Congressman Hill, maybe I'll kick it off to you. I know there's been some changes here to the PPP. There's some time elements to it. So why don't you take us through, if you could, some of those changes and how some of our small businesses can benefit from it?
You bet. Well, I really Appreciate James, the Little Rock Chamber doing this. I know Edward does too, and that's because trying to get the word out. You think as we go into a year of the pandemic that we wouldn't have to keep communicating, but Edward and I have been locked at the hip with each other since last March and constantly talking to our business community, our business owners, our sole proprietors, and our local community bankers all over the state to say, look, this is an unprecedented time, and the SBA, our Small Business Administration, has some unprecedented, never before utilized tools to help people cope through this terrible situation. Now, on top of the good things that the state of Arkansas has done and that the private sector participants around the state have done in the way of helping landlords, tenants, borrowers, commercial developers, our small businesses. So thanks for letting us do it. We want to do two things today. One, Edward and I are trying to get the word out on two different key points. One is that the Paycheck Protection money, which we reauthorized and refunded in December 27th, still has a lot of money in it, number one. Number two, if you got a Paycheck Protection loan last year, used it, whether it's been forgiven or not, you're eligible to get a second Paycheck Protection loan. I want Edward to go through that. And then the latest news this week, and why we wanted to jump on the phone with everybody today, is that the Biden administration has been focused on trying to make sure that sole proprietors, small businesses, businesses with less than 20 employees have access and a little extra communication on getting connected with their community bank and participating in this program. So I'm going to stop. We're going to do Q&A too, but I want Edward to focus on if you didn't get one, if you did not get one, remind people of the process. If you got one in 2020, talk a little bit about the new aspects of getting a second Paycheck Protection loan. And then today, what can we do to help our businesses at the Little Rock Chamber that have 20 or fewer employees to help them take advantage of this? So thanks for doing this, James.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm going to queue up some slides just so we can have a quick reference as well, and make sure if we're able to walk everyone through where we're at. So round one, initial PPP for the state of Arkansas, $3.3 billion in just over 40,000 loans. Arkansas, our community banks, our lenders across the state did a fantastic job really opening up the coffers, making sure we have funding going out throughout the community. What we're focused on now, just like the Congressman said, is really how do we get those less connected, smaller businesses that may not have had access or they need a little bit of extra information, access to this program. So that's what we're focused on. Since we've opened the PPP application process on January 11th, we've already processed another $2 billion in funding across the state of Arkansas, which puts us up at almost $5,000 or $5 billion across the state for our businesses and nonprofits. Really focused on from February 24th to March 9th, we have a 2-week window that businesses only with 19 or fewer employees can apply for Paycheck Protection. That's nonprofits as well. If you have 19 or fewer employees, you've got a window over the next 2 weeks. One thing I do want to make sure you're aware of is for counting employees, we have, regardless of full-time or part-time or seasonal, they count as one individual member for that. We're also going to look at those individuals who have not received a Paycheck Protection first draw loan. We want to make sure they have the ability to access this program. And I want to highlight a couple new eligible borrowers that can come to the table. That's the 501c6s, the chambers, housing cooperatives, news organizations, television organizations are now all eligible for the program. So we want to make sure we identify you all and get you up to the table so you can request that loan using your covered payroll costs, your average payroll cost for 2.5 months of your total loan amount, which will give you the proceeds for the PPP loan. One of the great changes we had with the Flexibility Act and the Economic Aid Act is now you have between 8 and 24 weeks in order to be able to use those loan proceeds as you see fit. If you haven't had a first draw loan, now's the time to get in and get your first draw loan. Those independent contractors, those self-employed individual businesses, they are all eligible. What we are waiting on now is, again, according to those changes the Biden administration has announced, we will see a recalculation methodology for our independent contractors and sole proprietors. That's going to hopefully help us increase the amount of loan funding going to these types of businesses. As most of you have known, and as the program is rolled out, we were using net profit as a calculation for average monthly payroll cost. That's on the agenda to change and potentially change to a gross income calculation that would get our businesses a little bit more access to capital. With that, if you've already had your first draw loan and you've used it, what we're looking for is if you're a business that has less than 300 employees now, we've reduced the size from 500 to 300, and you've suffered at least a 25% reduction in gross receipts, you're now eligible for the second draw loan application. And that's going to be a cap of $2 million for your loan. We're using the same multiplication factor for a 2.5 times payroll. And for those accommodation and food service businesses, we're going to give you a little extra cash there for a 3.5 time multiplier. So that's going to give our most hard hit businesses, the smaller businesses with 300 or less employees, greater access to funding and financing for their business to get them hopefully through the next couple weeks. 8 to 24 weeks is still their covered period. Additionally, they've expanded some covered costs that can be associated with these. So what I do want to do is get you directed to a resource partner or a lender closest to you so you can start working that application process. You really do need to be in communication with your lender to get through this process, since this is a loan product delivered through community banks, through banks, CDFIs, nonprofit intermediaries, and micro lenders. So I'll go ahead and pause there. And Congressman, is there anything else that I need to touch on right away?
Well, we did a restaurant call a few days ago, if you'll recall, and we talked about the quarterly period, you know, and I think you ought to give people a heads up about that because it might head off some questions. Basically, instead of 90-day periods around which to calculate the 25% loss from your 2019 business, the law really does say quarterly, meaning the quarter ends. And so to both Edward and James, as a result of that call and the advocacy of Jim Keat of Little Rock, Arkansas, I have got an amendment I've proposed to the budget reconciliation bill to try to give that flexibility, Edward. We have no idea if the opposition party will accept it, or if accepted, it'll pass and stay in the bill. But we have really been taking Jim's very good calculation and comments from our call that we had about 3 weeks ago and putting it to work up here to try to get that guidance and that change. So again, that was due to your help too, Edward, but take a minute though and explain that to people, because it will help you and see, it'll help them with their bank on application issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about a 25% reduction in gross receipts, what the SBA is really looking for is, has this business suffered a loss, a true revenue loss from, it doesn't have as many customers as it did the year prior, the 2019 to the 2020 comparison. So SBA is looking on a calendar basis. We've got to go through the standard 4 quarters as set by law in order to assess a 25% reduction in a quarter. And then we have an overall 25% annual reduction. Either one of those would put you in an eligible status for the second draw. So the call that we had with the Hospitality Association and the restaurant industry was really focused on, well, it doesn't shake like that for us, since we do pay periods on a different basis and our calendar quarters are on a different rolling basis. They use a different calculation methodology for their quarterly assessments. So we went back to SBA and we tried to find out what is the methodology and the reason why this calculation is set, and is it set at calendar only? And yes, for the PPP program, it is written in law that that's set on a calendar basis only. So we have to use the calendar calculation for the PPP program. What hopefully the Congressman has put forward will give us a little bit more flexibility. And I think that's the goal and intent of the legislation in the program, is to get flexibility to really those businesses who truly need it. So, I'm supportive from my seat here, and we're supportive to see if we can help those businesses get access and greater funding to hopefully get to the end of the pandemic. We put that money in their pocket and keep those businesses up and operating.
Excellent. Well, if you guys are ready, I know there's a couple questions here that I'll sort of go through. So just to kick us off, Edward, will you be able to share that PowerPoint document, those slides that we will send out to all the registrants of today's session? We'll get those slides to everyone. So Tim asks, if someone owns rental homes, would they be eligible for the PPP loan to cover the house note that isn't being paid by the tenant due to job loss / COVID?
That's going to be a no for Paycheck Protection, but I think the Congressman has better understanding of some of the renter relief that's coming out that's really targeted at those landlords who are challenged from their tenants unable to pay at this point.
Yeah, this was a change in the December 27th bill from all the CARES Act work that we did from March until December 2020. And there is rental relief now that's being distributed to the states. Arkansas is getting $200 million, particularly. It's going to be distributed through the Department of Human Services, as I understand it. And to the questioner's exact question, it can be applied for by a landlord or by a tenant. So someone who's really got a mom and pop series of rent houses, this is a precise question, and your tenant is a low moderate income person who's been hurt by the pandemic, is unemployed or near unemployment, and particularly if they have rent in arrears, this program will be helpful, I think. What Ashley Gunn's in the room with me today. Ashley works with me on financial services issues. We still have not seen, to my knowledge, the state of Arkansas's mechanism for accessing that. Both Edward and I want that. And James, this will be a very important thing for us to communicate out through the chamber when we get it. So we're all waiting. That money was distributed to the states by the end of January. It's now the last week in February, but it again is a new program. And so I assume you know anything more than that?
No, I think you said that it's going to be through the Department of Human Services.
Yeah, that's right.
Human Services. Okay.
So I'll also add a little to that. I know we've experienced quite a bit of that. If you do have tenants, Pulaski County Housing Authority or the local housing authority is sponsoring the emergency services grant for those who are also facing evictions due to non-payment of rent or any factor like that. And the CADC in your area is really the point of contact for you to begin those conversations with. Now, on the SBA side, of course, those landlords are eligible for the economic injury disaster loans. That is the program that if they're seeking any SBA assistance because they've significantly lost revenue, they can go and apply directly to the SBA for the EIDL loan, and that's the direct SBA to the business loan. But unfortunately, PPP is not meant for that.
So Edward, you might take a second. I mean, I don't know our audience knowledge level, but the Congress also, added significant funding to the emergency loan, the EIDL loan. EIDL is the acronym. You apply for that directly to the SBA. You might just give them the basic parameters on the advance of the maximum amount of money. And now, any guidance you have on the wait period, kind of how the processing is going?
Fantastic. So this is the EIDL loan program is an SBA direct to consumer loan. This is where SBA steps in the event of a disaster, and we do those direct loans. It is a low interest loan for for-profit companies is at 3.75%. For those nonprofits at 2.75%, and this is 30-year money. So ideally, any loan you would be eligible for, you have a 30-year repayment on this cash. So this is kind of PPP is a direct hit short term to take care of those immediate needs, and the EIDL loan program is really targeted at the long-term reconstitution during COVID. Again, apply directly at sba.gov/PPP. You can find the EIDL loan program there. This is going to extend you up to $150,000 is the EIDL loan limit still currently. And it's based off of your working capital needs to extend you up to 6 months of working capital based on historical cash flow. So they're going to request a copy of your tax transcripts. They're going to want to see and give some information of how much your overhead is on a monthly basis, and hopefully extend you up to 6 months on that. With that being said, the EIDL loan process is still a slower run process than PPP. You can get your PPP number and funded usually within 5 days or so. EIDL has taken significantly longer, and especially with those businesses who are asking for reconsiderations or increased loans amounts, those are taking a little while. I've seen really at this point, we're getting into more reconsideration status, but the average applicant can expect anywhere from 90 to 120 days minimum kind of turn time for that. Mm-hmm. So with that, there's another program that we rolled out in line with the EIDL, and that was the EIDL Advance. It was marketed as the $10,000 SBA grant. And it was $1,000 per employee for up to 10 employees. Well, with the changes under the Economic Aid Act, they've revised that program and refunded it to be a targeted EIDL advance now. And so what it does is it allows SBA to go back to all those original EIDL borrowers, send them an email asking them if they are qualified or if they would like to fill out an application to be qualified for the targeted EIDL advance. The targeted EIDL advance's intent is to make that business whole from the whatever they received on the EIDL advance to the full $10,000 payment. Now, it's no longer a $10,000 advance for anyone that applies. It has some specific criteria that you've got to meet. First, you have to be located in a low to moderate income area. SBA has recently put out on our website under the EIDL Advance, Targeted Advance area, a mapping system where you can put in your address to find out if you're in an LMI area. So you have to meet that qualification first. If you do meet that qualification, the second one is have you seen a revenue reduction of at least 30% or have a loss of receipts at least 30% or greater for your business? If you meet that, that is a second requirement that's on. If you meet both of those criteria, SBA is then looking to fund those to make up of the shortfall, whatever you received in the advance to wherever the full $10,000 is. So if you got $3,000 advance and you qualify, now you can get the remaining $7,000 as a grant to the business. Additionally, the SVOG, or the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant, is being worked now, and that's for those entities that have really gathering places, zoos, concert halls, museums are eligible for those SVOG, and you can go to sba.gov/SVOG to find out more. I feel like I'm a boatload of acronyms over here.
No, it's good. It's good, Edward. Thank you. So, so a couple of additional questions, and I'll remind everyone watching, just go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom. So, any progress on forgiveness for those companies that received PPP-1 loans in excess of $2 million?
Yeah, absolutely. We are working that. We've seen quite a few loans. We're really doing well on loan forgiveness. I think those are ticking in, and I definitely want to make sure I hear any feedback from the Congressman and what he's heard from our lending partners, but we've been ticking those through. Some of the larger ones are taking a little bit more time. We have to understand where we're at in the macro sense, though. Now, whatever we had dedicated to forgiveness, now that the faucet's back on to get PPP, that's where SBA's focus is really at. Sure. So some of those forgiveness reviews are slowing down. So SBA is focusing its manpower in order to get more of the funds authorized out the door.
We've not had new comments, James and Edward, about forgiveness. There's this issue of that if you applied for forgiveness and 90 days have gone by, Edward and his SBA team, or there are places where it's bogged down where they've got questions about documentation, but for the rank and file normal loan, and I don't know of any, I haven't had anyone tell me about that audit standard that Secretary Mnuchin put in place for $2 million and up being a problem. Have you, Edward? Because I think the questioner is really asking that question.
Yeah. So that, I mean, you still need to, and what's going to happen is the borrower necessity form is going to be required to be filled out, and the lender will be required, will pretty much be tagged to go fill out that necessity form. We haven't heard any pushback from our lending audience or any borrowers that have gotten denied thus far. So that's usually, when our ears perk up is when we have an issue. So that we're not hearing anything, that's good. Really the challenge now is getting new applicants through and reconciling if there's any known issues or new issues with identity and fraud verification checks that we're doing. That is slowing down the approval process a little bit for our second draw applicants. And of course, I think we collected about 15 of those loans that were beyond the 90-day mark, but we've been seeing those go through fairly straightforward as well. So
perfect. Okay. So another question here: received an email during the first round of PPP after applying sharing that I didn't show need for PPP funds. Should I apply again? My business was just starting in January 2020, so no revenue had been generated, but money was being spent to begin the build up of the business. 3 employees. As of today, I'm still in the same place as last year.
James, could you copy and paste that one in the chat so I could read through that one? That'd be easier. I've got one from Gerald that came in. If you've never applied for PPP, believe you qualify, what does approval look like? What's the process and timeline for receiving funds? So if you think you qualify, you definitely need to reach out to your lending institution or your local SBA resource partner. You can go to sba.gov/local assistance to find those. What I would do is really have a communication with that lender who's going to help prepare your documentation, tell you that you're going to need your 2019 tax filings or any other documentation that you would need. You would need to fill out their application. And really in this process, we do have an application that SBA created, but those lenders may have taken that application and put it on an online form. So you might not have to do a paper application. That's why you want to check with your lender first to see how they're receiving and accepting applications. You would go ahead and fill out that application with them. As long as they review it and find it good, they would then process that loan application. We would do some compliance checks and identity verification checks now on that loan application when it comes to SBA. As long as those come back clear, we'll authorize and send a loan authorization number within usually 48 hours. And then it's up to the bank to disperse those funds within the 10-day window. So pretty quick process, pretty seamless to get them through if you're qualified.
And I would just add to our listeners and the people who also will see this after you post it after the fact and have a chance this weekend to take a look. If you did not apply in 2020, you have an audience now that really understands this process and can really be of help. I mean, we had every one of our banks jumped on this, and thousands of companies were helped in Arkansas with over $3 billion last year. So there's a lot of expertise in our community banks now, credit unions,
Yep.
Our CDFIs. They really understand this, and they can guide you with that voice of experience. And so I would really reach out. Also, I would say our local accounting firms, our CPAs, the people who help you do tax preparation for your small business, they too have been through the ringer on this. So I really would encourage our viewers, if you didn't do this in 2020, you've got people out here that can really help you get through this.
Perfect. Edward, did you get a chance to look at the other?
Yeah, I think in order to address that question, if you received an email, this sounds like it's actually from our Office of Disaster Assistance team, and that they didn't show a need for funds. That would have been more of an idle conversation and showing an economic loss to the business. And so I would want to, obviously, I'll leave my contact information. If that borrower would contact us directly, we can give the individualized guidance and assistance that borrower needs to make sure they have the most accurate information and address them one-on-one. We find that a lot of times that's what we have to do is go off the webinar, get one-on-one to get the most accurate facts in order to address the situation, but we'd be happy to do that.
Perfect. So we're getting near the end of our time. If anyone has any additional questions, please go ahead and put them in. I do want to pose sort of one question to both of you, really. So I mean, part of what generated this was the sort of recent change in the last couple of days from the Biden administration. So just sort of underline here a little bit, what are the next, I guess, what is now 18 days. So it's a special period of time so that the remaining dollars that have been allocated to this can be accessed by small business. But give us a sense of sort of what the urgency is if someone's sitting here thinking about it.
Well, I would start just that Congress has been concerned from the very beginning, and actually, I'm encouraged that the Biden administration did this. I don't know that it was necessary per se, because when you look at the average loan size and the average number of employees, I think in Edward's numbers he's done so far, I think there are 1,100 loans they've processed with 50 or fewer employees. So I mean, there are a lot of small businesses that are applying for the product. But this is the administration saying, hey, sole proprietor, hey, gig worker, hey, self-employed barber who works and rents space from somebody else. If you miss this opportunity, we're just calling this attention out to you. Please reach out to your local bank. I think, and I've heard from banks all over Arkansas, CDFIs like Southern, but also traditional banks, where they've made PPP loans as small as under $1,000. So our institutions are prepared to help.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would also say, one thing I do want to call attention to is we do have this window, and as helpful as, anytime we can direct and really call attention to resources for businesses, for applicants, I think that's great. What we are waiting on now is some additional guidance in the new calculation methodology that the administration has proposed. That is going to, what that's going to do is it's going to help the lenders better process these loans using the proposed guidance that they send out on those fact sheets. So once SBA writes that guidance, usually SBA is notorious for publishing things at Friday afternoon. So I'm hoping it's today, but we are waiting on new guidance to find that loan calculation methodology that's going to go and impact these specific businesses, especially the ones the Congressman was talking about, the gig workers, the independent contractors. So once we see that, we'll see hopefully better calculation methodologies. But across the state, initially when this rolled out, we had a 2 or 3 day window where only our CDFIs or our CDIs could process. Well, I tell you, we had some CDIs that weren't prepared.
Yeah.
They weren't on the original boat, so we've been working with them to process, and we've got more CDFIs and CDIs processing loans now than we have before. So this is really a window that there's ample funding, that if you had a question, if you didn't think you qualified, ask the professional, ask a CPA, ask SBA, ask somebody to go over and review your situation, and let's see if we can get you qualified and get you into a lender in order to help make this work.
Well, as you both are well aware, 85% of our membership is actually 20 or fewer employees. So we know that this is important, and it's great to be able to highlight this opportunity for those small businesses. So final thoughts, Congressman Hill or Edward, as we wrap up here?
Well, Edward and I are here to help. And as I say, our banks are prepared, our credit unions are prepared, our CDFIs are prepared for this conversation. Our small business center out at the University of Arkansas Little Rock is prepared to help. We really have a knowledgeable group of folks to help our smallest businesses get access to this program. And then if you ever have any kind of application challenge, or if you feel like it's stuck in limbo, people can reach out at hill.house.gov. But let me really thank Edward and SBA for their great contribution today.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. I think we've got a lot of work to do to notify folks. I mean, I've been on calls all day and really want to get the word out. We do have a great network. And if you're not involved in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, now's the time to jump in and make sure you've got the connections and get introduced to the folks around the table to help get your application through the process. You can always reach out to me or my team. I've put my contact information in the chat. You can Google SBA Arkansas and find our location down on Riverfront. Please just make sure if you know somebody or that hasn't applied, they own a business, they have eligibility, let's have the discussion. We'll be on for the rest of the next until March 31st, pushing the PPP program as long as we have funding out and trying to educate borrowers that haven't had access to it. So check out sba.gov/updates for those upcoming webinars from our team on how to get information that you need.
Perfect.
And Congressman, I want to thank you for your advocacy on the Hill and really for the work that you've done structuring the program, because it's the flexibility in the program that really helps. And I know policy and implementation is only part of the job. It takes us all working together to help. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, we will, from the chamber standpoint, we will put this recording on the chamber's website as well as links to the appropriate information. And of course, we'll come back to you as if there are other major changes that we know that our membership needs, and hope to be able to count on. I know we can count on the two of you to jump back in as things change. But again, Edward, thank you so much. And Congressman Hill, thank you both for all of your work, support of our community, support of our small businesses. With that, we'll adjourn for the day and wish everyone a great weekend.